Welcome, dear listeners, to another spine-chilling episode of Thriller Nights. I'm your narrator, Greg, and tonight, we delve into the harrowing life and crimes of one of America's most infamous serial killers, Ted Bundy. But before we begin, I want to extend a heartfelt thank you to all our subscribers. Your support means the world to us. If you're new here, please hit that like button, leave a comment, and subscribe to our channel for more gripping tales. Now, brace yourselves as we embark on this haunting journey into the mind of Ted Bundy. Ted Bundy, born Theodore Robert Cowell on November 24, 1946, in Burlington, Vermont, began life under a shroud of mystery and deception. Raised by his grandparents, who he believed were his parents, Bundy's early years were marked by confusion and hidden truths. It wasn't until later in life that he discovered his true parentage, a revelation that sowed seeds of resentment and anger deep within him. Despite these early familial complications, Bundy was a bright and promising child. His teachers noted his intelligence and charm, while his peers saw him as a charismatic young man. However, beneath this veneer of normalcy, there were early signs of troubling behavior. Childhood friends would later recall unsettling moments when young Ted exhibited a disturbing fascination with violence and control. As Bundy transitioned into adolescence and young adulthood, these dark tendencies began to surface more frequently. While attending the University of Washington, he fell deeply in love with a woman who represented everything he aspired to be: sophisticated, beautiful, and affluent. When their relationship ended abruptly, it was a blow that Bundy would never fully recover from. This heartbreak is often cited as a pivotal moment, igniting a rage that would drive his monstrous actions for years to come. As the 1970s dawned over the Pacific Northwest, a wave of fear began to spread. Young women were vanishing without a trace, leaving behind heartbroken families and communities gripped by terror. Ted Bundy, with his unassuming charm and boy-next-door appearance, was the last person anyone would suspect of such heinous acts. Bundy's method was both diabolical and cunning. He often posed as a person in need, sometimes feigning injury with a cast or using crutches to appear vulnerable. This disarming ruse lured unsuspecting women into his trap. Once they offered to help, his demeanor would shift from charming to predatory in an instant. The brutality of his attacks was staggering, leaving investigators baffled and desperate for leads. Despite the growing number of disappearances, Bundy remained elusive. His ability to blend in and appear completely normal allowed him to continue his spree undetected. However, the first real crack in his facade appeared in 1974, when several women at Lake Sammamish State Park reported a man named Ted asking for help with his sailboat. This would be one of the first pieces of the puzzle that linked Bundy to the crimes. His capture, however, did not come until 1975, when a routine traffic stop in Utah revealed burglary tools and other suspicious items in his car. This led to his first arrest, but the evidence was not strong enough to keep him behind bars for long. Bundy's cunning nature allowed him to escape custody not once, but twice, leading to more murders while on the run. His escape from a Colorado courthouse in 1977 and subsequent spree in Florida, including the brutal attacks at the Chi Omega sorority house, showcased his escalating boldness and disregard for human life. Bundy's ability to evade capture while committing such heinous crimes only added to the public's growing fear and fascination. Each escape, each new crime, painted a portrait of a man who was not only cunning and intelligent, but also deeply disturbed and dangerous. As his crimes continued, the urgency to apprehend him intensified, leading to one of the most infamous manhunts in American history. By the mid-1970s, Ted Bundy's name was becoming synonymous with terror. His crimes had grown increasingly brazen, and his ability to elude capture only added to his infamy. As the bodies piled up and the details of his brutal methods became public, Bundy's story captivated the nation. Bundy's intelligence and charm, traits that once helped him blend into society, were now being used to manipulate and deceive those around him. His calm demeanor during interrogations and his ability to maintain a composed facade in courtrooms baffled law enforcement and the public alike. Bundy even took the unprecedented step of representing himself in court, further showcasing his belief in his own superiority and his disdain for the legal system. The media frenzy surrounding Bundy's trial was unprecedented. News outlets across the country provided constant updates, and Bundy's face became a fixture on television screens and newspaper front pages. His good looks and articulate manner led to a perverse fascination with him, with some even referring to him as a celebrity serial killer. This media attention only fueled Bundy's narcissism, making him believe he was untouchable. Despite his growing notoriety, Bundy's actions were far from glamorous. His crimes were horrific, and the fear he instilled in his victims was immeasurable. His kidnapping and murder spree spanned several states, including Washington, Oregon, Utah, Colorado, and Florida. Each crime scene bore the hallmarks of his twisted mind. The use of deception to lure victims, the brutal assaults, and the meticulous efforts to conceal his tracks. The police, meanwhile, were working tirelessly to piece together the evidence. Bundy's ability to move across state lines complicated their efforts, as different jurisdictions had to coordinate their investigations. It was the persistence of law enforcement and the growing network of clues that ultimately led to his capture. Bundy's second escape in December 1977, when he fled from a Colorado jail and made his way to Florida, marked a turning point. In Florida, he unleashed a new wave of terror, culminating in the savage attacks at the Chi Omega sorority house at Florida State University in January 1978. These attacks, which left 2 women dead and several others injured, were among his most vicious and brazen acts. The brutality of the Chi Omega attacks, coupled with Bundy's escalating pattern of violence, finally led to his undoing. Within weeks, Bundy was apprehended by police in Pensacola, Florida. This time, the evidence against him was overwhelming, and there would be no escape. As Bundy awaited trial, the full extent of his crimes began to emerge, painting a chilling picture of a man driven by an insatiable need for control and violence. Ted Bundy's charm and intelligence, which had allowed him to evade capture for so long, were finally starting to fail him. His first significant capture came in August 1975, when he was pulled over by police in Salt Lake City. A search of his car revealed a cache of suspicious items, including handcuffs, a crowbar, and a ski mask. This arrest marked the beginning of the end for Bundy's reign of terror, but it was far from the final chapter. Bundy was initially charged with aggravated kidnapping and attempted criminal assault for his attack on Carol Duranch, who had narrowly escaped from him the previous year. During his trial, Bundy's true nature began to surface. He opted to represent himself in court, displaying a level of confidence and arrogance that shocked many. Despite his efforts, he was found guilty and sentenced to 15 years in prison. However, Bundy was far from done. In June 1977, Bundy was transferred to Colorado to face charges for the murder of Karen Campbell. Here, his cunning and determination to escape became evident. During a pre-trial hearing, Bundy acted as his own attorney and was allowed access to the law library. Seizing the opportunity, he jumped from a second-story window and escaped. He managed to evade capture for 6 days before being caught and returned to custody. Undeterred by this setback, Bundy plotted another escape. On December 30th, 1977, Bundy managed to climb through a hole he had sawed in the ceiling of his cell and made his way into the crawl space above. From there, he broke into the chief jailer's apartment, changed into civilian clothes, and simply walked out the front door. This time, Bundy's escape led him on a cross-country journey that would culminate in more violence. Bundy fled to Florida, where he assumed a new identity and attempted to start a new life. But his compulsions soon took over. In the early hours of January 15, 1978, he broke into the Chi Omega sorority house at Florida State University. What followed was a spree of brutal attacks that left 2 women dead and several others severely injured. The brutality and brazenness of these attacks stunned the nation and marked the beginning of the end for Bundy. Just weeks later, Bundy was pulled over by police in Pensacola, Florida. This time, he was unable to talk his way out of trouble. The evidence linking him to the Chi Omega attacks and other crimes was overwhelming. Bundy's capture in Florida marked the end of his freedom and set the stage for one of the most infamous trials in American history. Despite his confidence and legal maneuvering, Bundy's luck had finally run out. His final capture brought an end to a reign of terror that had spanned several years and multiple states. But even as he faced justice, Bundy continued to manipulate and deceive, attempting to delay his inevitable fate through a series of confessions and appeals. The true extent of his crimes and the full horror of his actions would only become fully known as he awaited trial and, ultimately, execution. Ted Bundy's trial for the Chi Omega murders began in June 1979, and it was a spectacle unlike any other. The media frenzy was unprecedented, with cameras in the courtroom broadcasting the proceedings to a captivated audience. Bundy, ever the showman, relished the attention. Acting as his own defense attorney, he cross-examined witnesses and delivered opening and closing statements. His charm and intelligence were on full display, but they were not enough to mask the overwhelming evidence against him. The prosecution presented a meticulous case, including eyewitness testimonies and forensic evidence linking Bundy to the crime scenes. One of the most damning pieces of evidence was a bite mark on one of the victims that matched Bundy's dental impressions. The jury deliberated for less than 7 hours before finding Bundy guilty of 2 counts of first-degree murder and 3 counts of attempted murder. He was sentenced to death. Bundy's legal battles didn't end there. He faced another trial in 1980 for the abduction and murder of 12-year-old Kimberly Leach in Lake City, Florida. Once again, he was found guilty and sentenced to death. Despite multiple appeals and attempts to delay his execution, Bundy remained on death row, where he continued to manipulate and deceive, offering partial confessions in exchange for time. Bundy's time on death row was marked by a series of confessions and interviews, where he provided details about his crimes in an attempt to prolong his life. Psychologists and criminologists studied Bundy extensively, trying to understand the mind of a man who had committed such heinous acts. His final confessions revealed the true extent of his crimes, admitting to the murders of over 30 women, though the actual number is believed to be much higher. As his execution date approached, Bundy granted several interviews, including a chilling conversation with Dr. James Dobson, in which he blamed his actions on a combination of pornography addiction and his own uncontrollable impulses. Despite these last-minute attempts to explain his behavior, the public and the families of his victims were resolute in their desire for justice. On January 24, 1989, Ted Bundy was executed in the electric chair at Florida State Prison. His death marked the end of one of the most infamous chapters in the history of American crime. While Bundy is gone, the impact of his crimes continues to be felt, and his story remains a grim reminder of the darkness that can lurk beneath a seemingly normal facade. Ted Bundy's legacy is one of horror and fascination. His crimes have left an indelible mark on criminal psychology and law enforcement, shaping how future serial killers are investigated and prosecuted. Bundy's ability to manipulate and deceive, his charm, and his intelligence make him one of the most notorious figures in the annals of true crime. Thank you for joining us on this harrowing journey into the mind of Ted Bundy. If you found this story compelling, please hit the like button, leave a comment, and subscribe to Thriller Nights for more chilling tales. Your support helps us continue to bring you the darkest and most thrilling stories. Until next time, stay safe and keep your doors locked.